Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another edition of the Spurs Chat podcast. In this edition, we'll be talking about our 2-1 home defeat against Nottingham Forest, our 18th defeat in the Premier League this season. Now, we're live on YouTube, live on X, Facebook and Twitch, so please do get involved. Let us know how you are feeling right now as a Tottenham Hotspur fan. Now, of course, we were all on a high from Thursday evening going through to the semi-finals of the Europa League, and now back crashing down with another defeat in the Premier League against Nottingham Forest. Now, I've got three returning guests to the channel. We've got Craig Dearman back with us. Craig, how are you?
Oh, yeah. I was talking in the green room just, after the euphoria of Thursday, just coming crashing back down to earth. Tottenham Hotspur happened again. So yeah, not good after a nice relaxing Easter weekend. Hoped for a win, but sadly didn't get it again, did we?
We've also got Stu Miller with us again. Stu, how are you?
I'm okay, mate. Hate to lose always, but I'm Paddy positivity, that way. So I'm going to keep it positive, look on the bright side, and looking forward to chat it through with you boys.
And joining us all the way from USA is Jim Brentar. Jim, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm a little depressed, but not as near as depressed as like after the Wolves game, because today I set my expectations low. And actually, I thought we played really well in the second half. Too bad we couldn't play the first half that well.
Yeah. Jim, let's start the show with you. Let's get your thoughts on today's game because, as I mentioned there, everyone was on such a high because it was such a fantastic performance from the Tottenham Hotspur team, really well managed by Ange Postecoglou on Thursday, going through to the semi-finals of the Europa League. Everyone's on a high. How do you feel about that defeat? How do you feel about the game? Give us your thoughts.
Well, I feel slightly depressed, but I saw it as a game of two halves. In the first half, we made a couple of really dumb mistakes and we weren't really quite in it the way we needed to be from the start. But in the second half, we dominated. I mean, we just totally dominated the second half. And that was actually fun to watch, believe it or not, even though I still kept my expectations low. It's sort of like, no, it's probably not going to work out. But I like the way we're playing. So I'm not as depressed as I ought to be.
Craig, let's come to you. Let's get your thoughts on today's game.
Yeah, it's a slow start again, wasn't it? Becoming a bit of a trait other than the European game. I just think Forest obviously got 2-0 up and then just sat back. I thought we were better in the second half, but Forest allowed us to be better. Forest was quite happy just to sit there and let us come at them and deal with the 1,000,001 crosses we put in, and obviously we only scored from one of those. So I don't think it was necessarily us forcing the issue. I think Forest allowed us to do it. Reality is, if they'd gone on, they could have scored more goals. I think the performance was okay second half, but it's just not good enough. Again, that's a lot of defeats. Is that 18 defeats in the Premier League now?
Yep.
And I saw something on X. Somebody had said if you're a season ticket holder and you'd paid £1,200 for your season ticket, that's £200 per win you've paid to see in the Premier League this season. So it's just not good. I'm a big fan of momentum, and it just hasn't kicked on. We still had 6 Premier League games left before tonight, and it just would have been so good to get that momentum going into obviously a tough game at Liverpool and then the European games for the following Thursday. So yeah, disappointed again tonight.
Craig, is actually the most home league defeats in a Premier League season for Tottenham since the Premier League started in '92. It does seem like we are breaking unwanted records week by week under Ange Postecoglou. And that isn't a dig at the manager, by the way, although some people have aimed a lot of digs at Ange Postecoglou recently, despite the fact that we are in the semi-finals of the Europa League. But what was your expectations going into this game?
I actually expected us to, perhaps foolishly, I thought we'd win this game tonight. I really did. After that performance, they showed they can be a bit more pragmatic. I actually enjoyed watching the game a lot more last Thursday. Showed that we can change, we can switch it up a bit, but there just didn't seem to be anything spectacularly during the game, and we looked so open from any balls over the top, and they'd clearly they talked about it on Monday Night Football. They'd clearly targeted us from set pieces, from corners, from free kicks. They knew that's where the weaknesses were. Obviously, defensive errors again this evening, but I just expected more from us tonight. We had so many crosses into the box, so many chances created, so many poor crosses. Actually, it was all very well putting so many crosses in. They've got to actually find some of our players. No, undoubtedly, Richarlison should have scored. Sarr should have scored. Then there was a couple of others, but it just wasn't good enough tonight. And Forest just lapped it up at the back, really. And Romero and Van der Ven looked a bit shaky with Chris Wood in the air against them, and we'll come on to it, but his goal just showed that we just can't deal with crosses, and Bodo Glimt are going to be rubbing their hands together, because that is a similar sort of team to Forest we're going to be facing there. So they're going to sit back and soak up all the pressure, and they are no mugs. Everybody thinks we're through already. Let me tell you, we're not.
Craig, just on that point about the Europa League, do you feel like Ange Postecoglou and the players and the club as a whole have got all of their eggs in the basket of the Europa League, and these last few Premier League games don't really matter, whether that's the right word or not, and it's about getting game time into certain players?
I think that's probably a fair assessment, and I agree. It's not that it doesn't matter, but they've clearly got their eggs in the Europa basket.
Priority.
Yeah, absolutely. The priority has got to be the Europa League. I totally understand that. Totally get that, because the league's done. It doesn't really matter if we finish 17th or 16th or 14th, 15th, whatever. It doesn't matter in that regard. It's all the eggs in the Europa basket, but you have to show up in the league and show something. I'd say the second half was a bit better. You could see what we were trying to do, but by then I'd no thought that we'd actually get even a draw out of this game. I really didn't. It just felt that sort of game today, and obviously, is that the double? Forest have done the double over us now first time since 1996. Yeah, so I mean, that's a record, another record in itself, isn't it? But obviously, we've got to go to the champions elect on Sunday. If Arsenal win during the week, then Liverpool could win the title against us on Sunday, which is going to be bloody marvellous, isn't it? So yeah, doesn't get any tougher than Sunday.
Stu, let's come to you. I know you're one of the most positive guests that we have on this channel, and I love that. And it's funny because I've literally, just before going live on this podcast, I just did a BBC 5 Live interview, and I tried to stay positive in the fact that we are in the semi-finals of the Europa League. And I also said 18 league defeats is unacceptable. And like I said a few minutes ago, we are breaking unwanted records under Ange Postecoglou. Where do you stand on the manager? How do you remain positive? Because these remaining Premier League games, when I talk about unwanted records, we're going to Liverpool next. A place where we very, very rarely get a result. Of course, they have got the incentive to win that game because they can lift the Premier League title at Anfield on Sunday. How do you remain positive in this regard? Because like Craig touched upon there, Bodo Glimt with the way that they play, their style of play, they would have looked at this game tonight and thought, right, this is exactly what we need to do.
For sure. Let me rewind to original question. How do I stay positive? Some will call it wild delusion. I try to take each game in isolation as much as possible. You've talked with clarity about how that many league defeats are unacceptable, and I totally agree. I hate every single defeat that we have. What gives me some optimism is that actually over the course of the game, I firmly believe we did enough to win. On another night, that would have been enough to win. You can quite fairly say that Forest got their 2 goals and then defended their lead. But honestly, if you look at the whole game, I honestly with no delusion in my heart, say that we did enough to win. And we played Richarlison up front, who hasn't started a game for months. towards the end of the game, he actually looked a lot more of a threat, and of course he scored. Their keeper made a worldie. They had an incredible goal saved off the line. We had some chances that we probably should have put away better. So I think on the performance alone, it was unfortunately more silly mistakes that led to their goals. I think that Porro failed to clear from the near post header for their first goal. Elliot Anderson actually hit a fantastic strike that probably would have beaten Vicario even without the deflection. For the second goal, unfortunately, Mickey wasn't aggressive enough. He did let Wood get away from him. And I think that was an error on his part. Vicario as well, coming off his line when he shouldn't have done. So I could point to a lot of goals that we've had this season that, yes, there have been lots of goals that we've conceded in similar fashion that can be blamed on our defensive, inabilities. But we've also lost a lot of goals from individual mistakes. And I think when it came to it on last Thursday, they did have some chances, but we defended like we were going to die for a clean sheet, like we were going to die for that result. Forest defend every single game like that, and we don't defend every single game like that. We showed how we can get a result last Thursday, and I'm staying positive. Liverpool, I just want to see us give them a game. I want to see a performance where we're committed. We know that we're going to save players for the Europa League, and I'm fine with that. As we said, the league is kind of done. We just need to keep minutes in the right players' legs, and look more kind of do or die performances against Bodo in May.
We'll go through the individual match instance shortly, Stu. But Ange Postecoglou in his press conference has turned around and said that there's an issue at the moment with the focus and the concentration. Now, we saw that against Wolves, shipping 4 goals at Molineux last week. Individual mistakes, as you've mentioned. Going 2-0 down after 16 minutes, it could have very easily have been 3. And these are individual errors, lack of concentration and lack of focus from our key players. Is that a worry for you? Because, Ange pretty much alluded to it as well, in one of the previous press conferences ahead of this game, about, giving players game time, taking opportunities, and, the players have got to be ready. It's preparation for such important games in the semi-finals of the Europa League. And let's face it, a lot of these players are playing for game time, putting themselves in the shop window and saying, look, boss, I want to be in that starting 11 when the semi-finals come around. What do you put it down to? Because Ange Postecoglou has been in charge for nearly 2 seasons. Should there be players with lack of concentration, lack of focus, almost 2 seasons in?
Anyone that's heard me before knows that I've been a pretty stout, staunch defender of Ange. I'm certainly not uncritical of him. I see a lot of flaws that have happened during the past couple of seasons, but you can't concentrate for a player. You can't focus for a player. And we've seen a lot of individual errors this season in particular. And at some point, the players have to take their fair share of responsibility. Mm-hmm. And by the way, Ange does pretty much suck up is it? How can you force a player to concentrate? I've worked in education. You can't force a child to concentrate. You can kind of motivate them, yeah, sure. But a player has to do that themselves, for me. I'm not saying the manager isn't liable for a lot of our goals, and he is naive a lot of the time. But I actually think things have got better. At times, Wolves was a catalogue of errors. Again, I don't think those were all down to the manager at all. You could call me deluded or wrong on that. That's fine. But I personally believe that we've seen so many individual errors that are not just managerial mistakes. And at some point, the players have to stand up for that. If you look at Forest's defence and their defenders, they are defenders that die for a clean sheet, or at least will die attempting to get a clean sheet. And, and they're midfielders as well. And quite frankly, we don't have enough of those players. And I think like most things, there's always a balance. You know, it's neither one nor the other completely. Manager has to take responsibility. I think he does take responsibility in general. And the players have to take their fair share of the blame as well, especially for all those individual errors.
Jim, can I come to you on that same point? Because Red Kite 72 writes here, Chris, it's Angie's job to correct the problems with concentration, etc. I agree with that to a point, but I also agree with some of what Stu said there about, you know, the players must step up, they must give their all, they must concentrate, they must be focused. But I'll go back to the same point that I've been making for the last couple of months, is what Ange Postecoglou said so many times. When we get all of our players back, we will be an outstanding team. Now, I get we haven't spoken about the team selection yet, and Ange made changes again this evening. I get that he wants to give a lot of game time to a lot of players, get minutes in the legs, preparing us for that semi-final. But do you expect more in league competition? I know we've got nothing to play for in terms of league position. We know we can't be relegated, and we know that we're not going to qualify for a European spot via the Premier League. But these games are still very important to the fans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just asked me like 3 different questions that are built into one. Let's start with that comment from Red Kite. Somewhere in between, it's all Ange's fault and it's not Ange's fault at all is the actual truth. And that's Ange probably could and should do more, but damn, the players have made some dumb mistakes. Second, let's look at some of the players who have made those dumb mistakes. One of them who made 2 against Wolves and 1 today was a guy who's been pretty excellent for us thus far, Vicario. He made 2 bad mistakes against Wolves. He made a bad mistake today, but overall, he's been a team leader. He's worked hard. He speaks up on the field. I see him talking to other players, getting to lift their heads up to get their heads in the game. So it's not just that there's something bad or wrong with Vicario, and it's not just that there's something bad or wrong with Ange, but we need to do something to get those 2 together and working so it's focus, awareness, intensity from moment 1. And I'm looking for that just as much as you guys are. I want to see that too.
Jim, how do you think Ange Postecoglou should approach these final Premier League games? Because as we all know, you know, it's very important to us, the fans, the club as a whole, Ange Postecoglou, the players, etc. You know, that we do fully concentrate on these semi-final games against Bodo Glimt, you know, in the Europa League. So how should he approach them?
Well, I don't blame us at all for putting all our eggs in the Europa League basket, because that's our ticket into Champions League if we can do it, and I think we can do it. As far as Bodo Glimt go, there's one thing that Forest has that Bodo Glimt don't, and that's Murillo and Milenkovic. Bodo Glimt may have some good defenders, but they're not quite that level good. So I think we can do better against them than we've done against Forest today. And also Liverpool, you know, play Mikey Moore, play guys who haven't got much playing time, and give the stars just enough time so that they're match fit and sharp for the Bodo Glimt game. But it's sort of like Liverpool's winning the league, and even at our best, we focus all of our effort on it and have everybody healthy and all the players at their best. There's still no guarantee of a win. So why put our eggs in that basket? Let's put our eggs in the Bodo Glimt basket and worry about beating them first and foremost. That's how I look at it.
Right, so here are the stats here. Tottenham Hotspur 1, Nottingham Forest 2. Anderson put in Forest 1-0 up after 5 minutes. Chris Wood doubling Forest lead in the 16th minute. And Richarlison getting Tottenham's goal 3 minutes from the end in the 87th minute. Now, the match facts and stats. Tottenham Hotspur had 69.9% of the ball to Nottingham Forest 30.1%. XG, Spurs 2.14 to Forest's 0.64. Tottenham Hotspur had 22 shots to Forest's 4. Shots on target, Spurs had 6, Forest 3. This is an amazing stat for me here. Total touches inside the box. Tottenham 45 to Forest's only 4. Yeah. Goalkeeper saves, Spurs 1, Forest 4. Fouls, Spurs 11, Forest 12. And corners, Spurs 7, Forest 1. Now, as I mentioned, Spurs are 16th in the Premier League table, 18 league defeats. We have 37 points from 33 games. 5 games to go in our Premier League campaign. With the win, Nottingham Forest go up to 3rd in the Premier League table, 60 points from 33 games. Now, let's go through the starting 11 here. Vicario, Pedro Porro, Christian Romero captain the side this evening, Van der Ven, Spence, Sarr, Bentancur, Kulusevski, Odegaard, Richarlison and Tell. And the sub-bench this evening, Kinski, Davis, Danso, Gray, Basuma, Bergval, Maddison, Johnson and Solanke. Jim, I'm going to stay with you on this one. When you saw the starting 11 come out, how are you feeling?
I was feeling very good about the idea of resting and rotating because it's something I was highly critical of regarding Ange earlier in the season. And now he's getting the hang of, hey, play more people, keep people sharp, keep people fresh. So I like that. I like Richarlison starting. As you probably am aware, I'm a huge Richarlison fan because when you put him out there and he's healthy, he'll score goals for you. And so I love that. I might have thought about maybe Maddison, using him a little bit today, if not starting, but in the second half. But overall, I was not disappointed in the lineup. The lineup to me was never the problem.
Craig, let's come to you. Let's get your opinion on the lineup this evening.
I think from the back line forward, I mean, it was fine. Bit of rotation there. Very surprised to see Romero and Van der Ven start. I genuinely thought he was going to go with Danso and Davies, but he explained why. I don't think Romero or Van der Ven had the best game I've ever seen them play, obviously with the second goal, certainly, which we'll come on to. The marking was really bad. Kulusevski, good to see him back, but he did look a bit rusty at the start, which is understandable. Again, Odegaard and Tell probably the best 2 players for us on the night, actually trying to do stuff. But for the lineup, not bad. Should have been enough, but it wasn't again.
Craig, can I just ask you about the stat of 18 league defeats? And, of course, we're going to Liverpool and we've got some very difficult remaining Premier League games as well. How do you stand at the moment with Ange Postecoglou? Because, you know, for a manager, only the 4th manager in our history to put us into a European semi-final, of course, I can't get over that, the contrast of how we all felt on Thursday to the full frustration again. I know we've got to give players minutes, etc., but the fact that we went 2-0 down after 16 minutes, and as I said earlier, it could have quite easily have been 3.
Yeah, the results speak for themselves, don't they? And the league table doesn't lie. I know they're all cliches, but Tottenham can't be losing that many games in the Premier League season. Look, it's quite likely, and I fully expect us to finish 17th this season. I do. I think West Ham will climb above us. I don't actually know where the next point is coming from in the league, especially when you look at the next few games we've got. Well, the remainder of 5 games in the season, I genuinely can't see where another point is coming from. And I don't mean to be a doom monger. I just can't see it. I just think that Europa League's so important that they're going to throw everything at that. And that's it. Ange did say in his press conference when he was asked could he say to the Spurs fans after an 18th Premier League defeat this season, he said, I don't need to say anything to the fans. The fans are disappointed and angry, as we are as well. It's too many losses. I know that. I don't need to tell the fans anything. The fans clearly wouldn't be happy with our results, but neither am I or the players. From our perspective, it's something we need to accept. Responsibility that we have fallen short of the standards we need to have. So I don't know why we've played so badly this season. I think that could be a podcast on its own, but they just seem so disorganised defensively a lot of the time. And opposition teams have found us out. And they've found us out, to be honest, after the 10th game of last season.
Stu, let's come to you on the starting 11 today. How are you feeling about this lineup? Because I must admit, for me personally, I thought, well, that's a strong lineup. Ange Postecoglou needs to put game time in a lot of these players. In particular, like Jim mentioned there, players like Richarlison, they've hardly featured this season. So, it's very important to give these players game time. How are you feeling about the starting 11 today?
Yeah, I was fairly positive. I didn't have any problems with any of the inclusions. I thought it was pretty smart to give Richarlison minutes when he hasn't started a game for months, and who knows if we may need him in Europe, if Solanke gets an injury or he has to go off for some reason. So that was a smart move for me. Great to see Decky get some minutes under his belt. He didn't have a stellar game, but what are you going to expect? He hasn't played properly for at least a month. I thought Tell was a bright spark, as was Odobert on the other flank. I thought they were really bright today. Okay, a little bit of end product was lacking from them at times, but they were dangerous. They were taking their man on, and I thought that was as good we've seen from our wide players for quite a long time. So that was a positive for me. Bentancur, I think, is a funny player for me. He's not. We know he's not quite been the same since his injuries. I think he's had some good games for us in the last few weeks, but he's not been quite the difference maker that I feel he was before his injuries. Sarr, I thought, had a good game overall, and I thought he was pushing forward with intent, and on another night he could have had a goal. Overall, I thought it made sense. I thought it made sense to take off Van de Ven and Romero at half time. Listen, whatever you think, I don't want to lose a single game. I hate losing games, but whatever you think, we have to prioritize everything for the semi-finals. Now, there's no question of that. So whatever decisions have to be made with that in mind, I'm behind. Of course, I would love to have won today. I thought we did enough to win. Forest have only Liverpool have won more games away from home than Forest. They have easily one of the best defenses in the league, and we could have put 3 or 4 past them. So look, it's not all in doom and gloom from my point of view. We've lost far too many games this season, but if you take the 90 minutes in isolation, I thought overall it was a good performance, bar a couple of calamity, individual errors pretty much. So that's how I saw it.
It's certainly a surprise, Stu, isn't it? The way that Nottingham Forest have been so consistent this season, and at this stage of the campaign, to be sitting in third, and Nottingham Forest, in contention now of playing Champions League football next season under Nuno Espirito Santo. He's done a fantastic job there, hasn't he?
Yeah, all credit to him. And I'm honestly, I'm happy for them. I like Forest as a club, and always have, to be honest. I lived in Nottingham for a little bit as well, but they're having a bit of a Leicester type season. Are they going to stay there next year and beyond? I'm not convinced. I think Nuno's done really well to organise them and set them up in a particular way. They're obviously, always looking for the counter-attacking threat. They soak it up, and then they use Wood as their talisman. He scored 19 goals this season in the league. So look, we're not the only team that have got done by Forest. And I would say, if you look at all of their performances, there haven't been that many teams that have performed in an attacking sense. But obviously getting more goals, which is, I know that's a huge part of it. But I was honestly, I feel positive by our overall performance in terms of going forward. I am dismayed by the goals that we conceded, and that's always a concern. But I take positives from it, and I'll always be that way. I'll always try and take positives as much as I can.
Jim, before we come to you and start talking about the game itself and all of the match incidents, we're going to hear now from Ange Postecoglou. This is what he had to say in his post-match press conference.
Oh, look. It's another game we've lost where we shouldn't lose. And it's been, a big part of our season in that we're just making things really difficult for ourselves in key moments, just a little bit of concentration and giving away poor goals. It's a shame because our football was outstanding. We totally dominated the game, and even for 2 goals we conceded, I still felt we deserved to win the game. But at the same time, it's another loss, and it's another unacceptable loss. And for us, it's just been a season where you know, at times have been our own, even with the challenges we've had. And look, we had challenges today because obviously I'm having to make changes to the team, but you know, it's just really frustrating because our football was so good that, you know, you've lost another game.
18 defeats in the Premier League. I mean, what do you say to the fans of that tally of defeats?
I don't need to say anything to the fans. The fans are disappointed. They're probably angry as we are as well. It's too many losses. I know that. It doesn't. I don't need to tell the fans anything. The fans clearly wouldn't be happy with our results, but neither are mine, neither are the players, and you know, from our perspective, it's something we need to accept responsibility that we've fallen short of the standards we need to have. But the flip side of that is the frustrating bit is it's not because of, you know, the way we're playing, you know, because our football today, you know, is very similar to the Frankfurt game here at home. You know, it's another game we should have won.
Double change at half time, was that pre-planned?
Yeah, that was pre-planned. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just could ask you about the shows in the squad this night. What is that just doing personally?
Yeah, look, that was part of the exercise today to get sort of him and Wilson, Kulusevski, Kevin Danzo, get him some game time because obviously they've missed a hell of a lot of football. I mean, which he's hardly played all year, but Decky's been a couple of months. Same with Wilson and Kevin. So from that perspective, it was good that they all got through it and got some meaningful minutes. We could rest a few others, which was also useful for us. So yeah, from our perspective, it was a positive.
And do you think that trying to avoid maybe you know, a worse points total is any motivation for the players, or is it more about Europa League, or what's the motivation like in the squad there?
I mean, I don't know what that means in terms of. I don't think you didn't see a team that was motivated. I mean, it's not like we lost because the players chucked it in. If that's what people saw, then they're watching something different to me. It wasn't I don't think they lacked motivation today because I thought our football was outstanding. And but again, we've paid the price for lacking focus and concentration in key moments. And you know, it's another game we've let slip. So I don't think motivation is an issue.
Lacking focus and concentration, is that lack of leadership or experience from some of the players?
No, it shouldn't be because it's happened to us a few times this year, and you know we should learn from these things. But it's a constant in our sort of makeup at the moment that something we need to eradicate. At different times this year, we've shown real good focus and concentration. Frankfurt being a classic case of that. But tonight, just at the start, we just didn't sense really the only threat that Forest were going to have on the counter attack, which I thought we handled really well in set pieces, and we gave away 2 poor goals.
And I want to ask about Vicario as well. Last week, an error tonight. Do you have any worries about his confidence at all with something knock up?
No, I don't. No, he's fine.
As Destiny, I know he was here, wasn't he, and James Madison after Thursday?
Yeah, they're okay. Destiny was fine. We just left him out of the squad tonight. He put in a big physical shift on Thursday, and it was always the idea to rest him, but I wasn't going to put him on, so there's no put him on the subs bench. Matters was pretty sore yesterday, but the last 24 hours he recovered and he was keen to sort of be on the bench. But they're both fine.
And what was the sort of thing, I guess, with Mickey and Christian? You did at Wolves, you played them in on Thursday, and took them out in May. We thought they might not play tonight.
Yeah, no, I thought they needed to play some minutes tonight because then, obviously, becomes sort of 10 days leading into Liverpool, and I think with both of them, we've got them in a real good place physically now, and I just want to keep them ticking over. I think playing more than 45, there was no need today, especially because we needed to get a couple of other players game time. But I just felt with it being a Monday night game, probably if it was Sunday they wouldn't have played, but Monday night, especially for Mickey because, he's just been playing the one game a week, and, we need to build him up because, he's in a real good place at the moment. So I just felt 45 minutes for both of them would be beneficial.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, let's come to you first on that. Let's get your reaction to all of Ange Postecoglou's press conference comments there.
Well, I agree with most of everything he said. yeah, he doesn't need to tell the fans that we lost another game and that it's unacceptable. And he's not telling the fans not to be angry. And he's being very honest, I think, when he says it's not acceptable to him or the players or the team as a whole. And he was actually kind of right, too, about the football, because in the second half, we played some outstanding football there. It wasn't just Forest letting us have the ball. It was our hustle. It was our finding some of the spaces that they did leave open and exploiting them. So it wasn't that we played like crap the entire game. We played like crap for a couple stretches in the first half, but overall, I thought the team played pretty well. And it just goes to show that sometimes the game hinges on the smallest of things. Their player makes a miracle clearance off the line. A few inches more, that's in. Or if he doesn't strike it cleanly, if he just puts it into the roof of the net, it's in. And that's something that's out of the control of Ange, the players, of everyone. Richarlison would have had a brace, but for an excellent save by their goaltender. On that one, Richarlison did everything right. He headed the ball down. He headed it toward the corner of the goal instead of directly at the goaltender, and he got it on target, and it took an excellent save. Otherwise, that's another goal right there. So it's not that we played like shit the entire game. It's that we had some really bad play for a while in the first half, and we paid the price for it. And I agree with Ange. It's not acceptable, and I'm not happy about it. I'm happy that we played better in the second half, but I'm not happy about the outcome.
Jim, where do you stand on football being a results-led business? Because I think it's fair to say that a lot of managers have not been given the time or the patience to, go back to Pochettino, sacked in the November, having drawn 1-1 against Sheffield United. We were sitting mid-table. Pochettino was sacked. Are you surprised by the level of the amount of defeats that we've had this season in the Premier League?
I'm not pleased with it, that's for sure. Every loss is hurt, but the ones that have hurt the most are not the ones like this game where we play well, at least for most of the game, and lose. They're the ones like against Leicester or Palace or Wolves or some of the other games when we just are sort of like, what the hell? And it's indeed not acceptable. And indeed, Ange deserves some share of the blame for that. But then again, I'm not one of those people who's going to dump it all on Ange, and I am going to criticize the club for how quick we've been in the past to fire managers. For once, we're being a little common sense here, and we're allowing Ange the chance to prove themselves in Europa League. That's something that Nuno didn't get. That's something that Mourinho didn't get. Something that Conte kind of threw himself and the whole team under the bus at one point. But I actually like that we're willing to say, okay, let's stick with this guy at least till the end of the season, and then at least we can make a better decision than some of the rash decisions we made in the past, because the Pochettino one was the worst. It was done simply because Mourinho became available and everyone thought Mourinho was the savior, and no, he's not. No, he wasn't.
Craig, before we get your reaction to Ange Postecoglou's comments there in his post-match press conference, an interview has literally just gone out from Argentina press. And it is a video, by the way, of Vice-Captain Christian Romero on his future and the Europa League. He said, "We're in the Europa League semi-finals. I want to finish this season on a high note. After that, we will see. A league that I would like to play in would be Spain, to compete in all the major leagues." Are you surprised by this interview of Christian Romero, particularly this timing?
I'm not, because he tends to give interviews like that, doesn't he? Everything seems to come out on international duties, and he does talk to his own countrymen, reporters, quite a lot, or he seems to. It doesn't surprise me, to be honest. He clearly wants out in the summer. Bit unprofessional, really, because he's still playing for Tottenham. He's a Tottenham player, and he's essentially a captain at the moment as well. I don't like to hear players talking about that. He doesn't need to talk like that. But perhaps he's just had enough. Perhaps he wants out and try something new. How long's he been with us now? 4 years?
But this is a player who wore the captain's armband this evening, and he's clearly
Exactly.
done this interview before this evening. This is obviously done some time ago. But for someone wearing the captain's armband to pretty much say that he wants to go and play in Spain, that's not on.
It's not on at all. But he doesn't, as I say, it doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me. He clearly, for the most of this season, he's wanted out. There's been rumours in the press. There's been rumours every time he's been back to Argentina about whether it be Atletico Madrid or Real Madrid. He's clear that he's off in the summer, but whoever buys him has got to put up the money. I just hope Spurs get a decent wedge of money so he can go and get somebody who actually wants to play for Tottenham. Sad, very sad, but it is what it is.
Craig, just very quickly, sum up your opinion on the Ange Postecoglou presser.
It's funny. I felt like I'd listened to it many times before. It's almost the same thing, rinse and repeat. You could have put out a press conference from 10 weeks ago, Chris, and it would have said the same thing. He would have been saying the same thing. Nothing's really changed. Nothing's really improved in the league. So I can't really say much other than what I've said before. It's the same things he's saying. We were unlucky. Individual errors or two lapses in concentration. It just seems like it's the same week in, week out. I'll be fair to Ange. That the amount of chances we created tonight, that's not on Ange. The fact we missed them, that's not on him. That's down to the players.
Yeah. But of course, the stats don't lie, and like I keep saying, and I hate to be negative here. The stats don't lie, and the amount of unwanted records we keep breaking and are going to probably break from now until the end of the season is where my problem is.
Yeah.
Stu, very quickly before we talk about the game itself, give us your thoughts and opinions on what Ange said there.
Yeah, we have heard that a lot, especially in the second half of the season. But I don't know quite honestly what more can he say? What are we expecting him to say? To me personally, and other people might see it differently, I think he generally does take responsibility. Has he said some things that we don't agree with in terms of reasons for not getting results sometimes? Yeah, probably, but every manager under the sun does that. So I think people scapegoat Ange for a lot of reasons, not least because we're 17th in the table. But honestly, I don't know what else you expect him to say. At this point of the season, I want to win every game that we can, as always, but the Europa League is all that matters. And clearly, that's where the focus is.
Can I put it another way then, Stu? Because, some weeks ago, Ange said, when I get all of my players back, we are going to be an outstanding team. He called that an outstanding performance this evening. Do you agree with that comment? Because I don't think I do.
I would say, bar the two individual mistakes, if you take the game as a whole, I think it was a very good attacking performance. But obviously, you've got to put the ball in the net, and that didn't happen for us tonight. But if you took the, I know stats only tell so much of a story, but if you look at those stats you put up at the beginning of the podcast, you would be shocked to see that we lost 2-1. I think in general, right? So yeah, look. Our squad is not good enough. We know that. We are badly missing a pure dominant defensive midfielder, which we don't have regardless of how many of our first team players are on the pitch. We are missing elite, ready-made wide players, and certainly backup for Solanke. We need to improve the quality of the team if we're going to keep Ange. Because Ange's style of football absolutely demands players that can handle it, and we don't have enough of those. So, look, I would be critical of Ange in terms of he does depend on having those players that can handle his style of play, and he doesn't perhaps have enough of those other plans up his sleeves to play different ways. Having said that, towards the end of the game, he put two up front. When have we seen that from him before? And actually, it did create some havoc in their defence. It did help us score a goal, and we could have scored others. So look, and we've seen more evolution in terms of him trying different things out in the last few weeks than we have previously. So I think he's trying to learn. I'm absolutely appalled by some of the comments that are aimed at Ange from so-called fans. I think there's no excuse for it. If you're constructive and you're critical of him, absolutely fair enough. But I've had enough of people just throwing insults, hurling mud at him. To me, you're not a fan, so I do not listen to those people. I listen to people that put their case forward constructively, and you're willing to disagree with me, if you do that.
Jim, let's come to you. Let's talk about the game itself. After 2 minutes, Matisse Tell had a shot blocked. After 4 minutes, Gibbs White shot from 20 yards, save from Vicario, turning it round the post. Great save from him. A minute later, of course, Nottingham Forest took the lead. Pedro Porro heads a corner across the box. It falls to Elliot Anderson, who shoots, slight deflection off of Bentancur. Vicario, should he have done better for this goal, in your opinion?
Excuse me. I don't blame Vicario for that one. I don't blame Porro either, because his job is to get that ball and keep it from going into the danger area, and that's precisely what he did. So after he gets his head on the ball, it's up to the other players to react quicker than the Forest player can react. The player who is, in my opinion, the biggest culprit is Bentancur, because if you watch it in slow motion as Anderson winds up to take his shot, Bentancur starts to turn his back. His eyes come off where the ball is going, so he doesn't know how high or low to leave his trailing leg. And instead of blocking it, he deflects it instead. And I think that deflection, more than anything, crossed up Vicario. So I'm blaming Bentancur more than Vicario on that one.
Craig, let's come to you. Let's get your thoughts on the first goal that we conceded. And, it's just so frustrating, isn't it? The fact that we've just started a game like this yet again.
It is, yeah, a slow start again, 5 minutes in. I blame Kulusevski for this. He looked like he was turning to run up the pitch before it was even cleared. So I think Kulusevski lost his man on the edge of the box. You can see him there. He doesn't know where that man is. And he's ready to get a shot in. And he gets a shot in. I think Vicario should have done better, if I'm brutally honest. I think Vicario went down in installments there. I think he'll be gutted that he managed to let that in. But I think he had two hands on that. I'm surprised he didn't get hands to that, to be honest, because he is a very, very good shot stopper. Took a deflection absolutely off Bentancur, but I think, to sum it up, I think Vicario will be gutted he didn't save it. But for me, error comes from Kulusevski not picking his man up on the edge of the box.
I've got to say, actually, after the game, I look at the body language of a lot of these players, and Vicario looked the most upset walking off that pitch this evening. Craig, let's stay with you, because after 10 minutes, it looked like Forest were 2-0 up. This goal then went to VAR. It got disallowed. Ball played from Anderson, Wood tapping home, went to VAR. This was the VAR call, just slightly offside. But we knew what a threat Chris Wood was going to be in this game. And it's funny because I did a match preview with Ben, who's a Nottingham Forest fan, and he virtually said, this is exactly how the game's going to go. You're going to have a lot of possession, you're going to have a lot of shots, but we're going to win the game. This is how it goes. Nuno Espirito Santo, Nottingham Forest, they don't have a lot of possession, but they win games like this. Yeah,
we got it spot on, didn't he? Like I say, they looked to win 1 goal, 2 goals up, and then just sat back and soaked up the pressure. And they knew we were vulnerable from crosses, set pieces, and they got it spot on. That goal, obviously, he was offside. You can see he was offside. He actually looked more than that, actually, in real time. I'm surprised it's not more, but it was a good flick on and a great finish from Chris Wood. He actually was annoying when he was at Leeds, actually. He was one of those strikers, and when he was at Burnley as well, he always seemed to score against Tottenham. So yeah, not surprised he notched tonight.
Craig, let's stay with you, because Forest did go up 2-0 up after 16 minutes. Alanga with a cross in, Wood with a header. It was in between Romero and Van de Ven. Vicario came out, but he was absolutely nowhere near it.
Yeah, Vicario for me. I mean, we look, three things, in fact. The cross isn't shut down quick enough. Van de Ven and Romero lose Chris Wood. They said on Monday Night Football, Jamie Carragher said it should have been Van de Ven because he can see the back of his shirt, and I tend to agree. I was never a defender, but he's miles away from him there. Chris Wood's got the jump on him, you can see. I've no idea what Vicario's doing. He's never getting there. He come in behind it. I think he thought Chris Wood was going to completely miss it.
Yeah.
Well, he obviously hasn't watched his heading ability, but that was again was poor goalkeeping by Vicario as well.
Stu, what did you make of this second goal? Because I tend to agree with Craig here. Van de Ven or one of the defenders there need to deal with this cross in. Vicario's come out, made a real hash of it. Vicario for me is a great shot stopper, but with these crosses, he just seems to struggle a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's difficult to argue with that. I think it was a combination, without doubt, of Van de Ven not being aggressive enough and not, on Wood. And then, Vicario's just unfortunately made another poor error of judgment with the cross, which we've seen far too many times. I absolutely love Vic. I love his personality. He's one of the few players that, we've said this season that at least acts like a leader on the pitch. But look, teams have figured out that you put the ball in close to him, he's going to struggle more often than not. This isn't an issue. And I don't know. I hate to even, because I do like him so much, I hate to suggest that, but can we honestly expect sustained success in being a defensive unit with a player that can't handle crosses that way? He has to show real improvement in that game, and whether it's the fact that we don't have the goalkeeping coaches to do that, whether it's just his own issue, I'm not sure, because I'm not on the training pitch every day. But yeah, it guts me to say that he is a real weak link in that regard. But as you've also said, there's probably no better shot stopper in the league, and he has also saved us points at times with that part of his game. Mickey, for all his incredible skills and abilities, even before, when he joined us from Wolfsburg, stats again only tell a certain part, but I did look quite closely at his game because I wasn't really familiar with him, and for his height, his aerial dominance doesn't match his height, and I think that's something that he still needs to work on. He's still a pretty young defender, and he needs to get better in that regard, and he showed that today. So look, it was a catalogue of individual errors. You could perhaps say that if you want to put that on the coaching team, I'm not going to say there's none of that, but honestly, on a different day, those goals could have been kept out by the same players.
Jim, are you surprised with how we defended this evening? Because when you look at that centre-back partnership in Van de Ven and Romero, you think like that should be solid. We should not be conceding these types of goals or the amount of goals that we've conceded this campaign.
Well, except for those 2 or 3 really good chances they had, they were solid all evening. It was, just those two. I saw at times a guy dribbling down, trying to get past Romero. He reaches Romero, bam, ball goes away, the threat goes away. I've seen Mickey Van de Ven 3 times today just stop and shut down a player. So it's not like they just turned to total shit. It's that they have to do it 90 minutes. They cannot switch off. And Van de Ven was actually in decent position on that second goal. He mistimed his jump. And yeah, he does need to get better at his aerial challenges. But Vicario broke the cardinal rule of goalkeeping. You do not go out after the ball unless you know with absolute certainty you're going to get to the ball. You just don't. My cousin's a goaltender. I know these things.
Jim, let's stay with you, because in the 20th minute, Wilson Odobert, good cross in, nearly caught out the goalkeeper, Sells, and in the same minute, Odebear with a 20-yard effort saved by Sells, turning it around the post. And then a couple of minutes later, Tell with an effort over the bar. What did you make of Wilson Odebear and Matisse Tell this evening?
Well, as both Craig and Stu have noted, they were trying to make things happen all evening. They were using their quickness, which is good. I like to see it because that's like Odebert's one of his big strengths is he's just quicker than other people and faster. And Tell used his speed and quickness at times, and they were trying to make things happen. As far as putting every shot on target, they weren't great at that, but they put a couple shots in that needed saving. So it's not like they were useless or worthless, but damn, with all those chances we created, we should have put some more of them into the back of the net.
Craig, can I ask you the same question? What do you think of Matisse Tell and Wilson Odebear? Of course, Odebear, his first season at Spurs. Tell, would you sign him on a permanent basis if you had the choice?
I wouldn't sign Tell for 60 million that's being quoted, that's for sure. I thought he had a decent game tonight, but I don't think he's a 60 million pound player. Perhaps 2025, I'd probably sign him, but Odebear I thought was okay tonight. There is a player in there. I love tricky wingers. I love fast wingers, as you know. I still don't think there's still something in me that thinks we could do better, get a couple of better wingers though. But it's not going to happen in the summer. It's just not. I think there's other pressing positions that we could get another striker in, for example, that could finish some of the chances, because we are putting crosses in the box. And if those crosses come in the box, a Harry Kane, for example, I'm not saying Harry Kane's coming back. He's not. But, you know, imagine if we had a Harry Kane in the box, we would have scored more goals this season, 100%. And I think that's key for me. Richarlison isn't the answer. I would get rid of Richarlison in the summer. I love his work rate. I love his passion, but I just don't think he's good enough. And Solanke just needs to score more goals, basically. His work rate, as I've said before, is phenomenal. It's incredible work he does for the team, but he just needs to score more goals. He's a number 9.
Jim, let's come back to you. You wanted to talk about Harry Kane.
Yeah, I wanted to mention Harry Kane right here because I watched some of the Bayern Munich game this weekend, and I watched all of the highlights. And Harry missed like 3 or 4 shots. You've seen him do that with Spurs before. That they were the shots that Harry knows he should have made, and he's down on himself. But his missing one never stopped him from taking the next one, and the one that he did score put their team ahead, and they never relinquished the lead. That's what I like about Richarlison, is that I've seen a lot of guys on Spurs afraid to pull the trigger on a shot. Richarlison is one of the few who are willing to pull that trigger. And yeah, some of them missed badly. On a couple of them, he and Sarr sort of like ran into each other and needed to communicate with each other better. But he put 3 of them on target. 2 of them definitely should have scored. One took a great goalkeeper save, and the other took a great bravery from the goalkeeper to stick his chest right out in front of Richarlison booting the ball. So the only question with Richarlison is, can he stay healthy? If he stays healthy, he's a valuable player. The only problem, the big problem, is his inability to stay healthy.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about Richarlison shortly. Stu, let's come to you. After 24 minutes, Kulusevski with an effort on goal from 20 yards straight at the goalkeeper. 9 minutes later, ball over the top for Alanga to run onto. Brilliant defending from Mickey van der Ven. But, of course, we all know what pace he has. On 31 minutes, Odebear, great cross shot. No one there. Straight across the face of goal, no one there. That is exactly where you need a player to be. As Craig mentioned there, of course, Dominic Solanke wasn't on the pitch at that point. But, you know, a typical goal scorer, they need to be in that position because that was a simple tap-in.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that, you know, if we could just touch on Tell, I enjoyed his performance today. I thought he played well on Thursday. I think he's starting to show, you know, why he is rated as one of the top or one of the better young players in Europe. His attitude for me is a big one, and I've loved how he's kind of taken on a mantle of being, kind of a leader after 10 games pretty much at the club, even before that. And I do love his attitude. Okay, his finishing has lacked some finesse at times, and he struggled to kind of get up to the pace of the Premier League in particular early on. But I thought he did pretty well today. He did flag a bit in the second half as the game went on. But I like him, and I think we need more of that. We don't have, like, one of my biggest criticisms of Johnson. I love the goals that he gets. His goal record is great. But you don't see that fight from him in terms of his attitude. You know, he's got that kind of soft persona, which I think is the opposite. I think he's one of those guys that is going to push a team on. He's going to take on a man. He's going to keep going regardless. And we need more of that. Sorry, I don't know if that answered the question. But yeah, we've definitely also lacked perhaps a man at times pushing forward through midfield when Maddison hasn't been playing, and potentially Sarr could have got on the end of that. He did at times provide a bit of a threat in the box, but I thought he could have done that more as well as he did play.
Stu, you mentioned Tell there. 5 minutes before the halftime break, he had a wonderful chance. He blasted it wide. I looked down to Ange Postecoglou, who had his head in his hands. He couldn't quite believe that he didn't get it on target. Everyone around me shouted, "You've got to be getting that on target." Now, what have you made of him in a Spurs shirt? And as Craig said there, 60 million euros. Would you be paying 60 million euros on Tell to make this deal permanent?
I think that's definitely on the expensive side. I did read that we've been looking at renegotiating that deal, and I wouldn't be surprised if we come in with a bid between, say, 40 and 50. I think for a young player with the potential that I really believe he has, and just as importantly, if not more importantly, the attitude that he has, I think I've seen enough from him the last couple of games in particular, and in general with this attitude, that I think it might be worth a punt. What I would say is that perhaps not at the expense of getting, the best quality player that we can possibly attract in a wide position. I hate to. I'm not ragging on Sonny at all, but we haven't really missed him much the last couple of games that he's been out, and I hate saying that. I think we've missed him off the bench. I think he could have really provided something off the bench, but I don't think we can rely on him starting game in, game out anymore. And we badly need a top class, ready-made wide player. Yeah,
that's a very interesting and very factual point, I think, Stu, that, even recording this podcast, we're over an hour in, and I haven't seen one comment from any Spurs fan yet on any of this stream saying that we missed Heung-min Son. Now, talking a little bit about Richarlison and Tell a little bit more, just before half-time, a brilliant cross in, Richarlison heading wide, and then on 44 minutes, Tell cross from the left, header from Richarlison, and that also went wide. Groans from the crowd for Richarlison missing the target. Stu, how do you feel about Richarlison? Because I've got to admit, I just think that Richarlison, when it comes to a bit of shithousery, he's absolutely fantastic. Goal scoring, he went through that goal scoring, that good goal scoring spell last season. But for me, the amount of opportunities that he's had when he has been fit, he has sadly missed. And I feel like sometimes, you just have to say it hasn't worked out. And I agree with Craig. I would offload Richarlison this coming summer if Spurs get a decent offer in. And I just feel like sometimes it is, you need to part ways through, the player wanting to go on and, have a fresh challenge. He's had a lot of injury problems. I agree with Jim. If a player like Richarlison could stay fit, you never know. But for when he has been fit, has he taken his opportunities enough, in your opinion?
Well, I think the two are linked. I think we haven't seen him consistently stay fit for anything close to a whole season. And if you don't have those consistent, that's consistent game time, it's difficult to find your rhythm. I, unfortunately, because mostly more than anything else, because of the injury record, I think I would agree that, look, if we can get a really good backup to Solanke that is more reliable in terms of being available, then yeah, I think we do probably have to move Richie on. I think he just lacks that next level of quality that you do need up front. I do love the shithousery. I like him generally as a personality. He's obviously had his struggles mentally, and I respect the fact that he's been public with that. You can see that he does let his head drop sometimes, but he eventually dusts himself back up, dusts himself off and goes back at it. But yeah, I sadly think that as much as I like him, I think we can get a more reliable player up front that can be available and just have that extra bit of quality in front of goal.
Jonesy writes here, our front three, our front line needs to be more clinical and must be upgraded this summer. We should be looking at someone like Cunha. What a player he is. Now, Jim, let's come to you. Tell created 4 chances in the opening 45 minutes, the most of any Spurs player in that first half. But again, at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and again, watching a Spurs game, I witnessed the fans booing the team off at halftime.
Yeah, I wasn't horribly surprised by it. And I'm total sympathy with every Tottenham Hotspur fan that's trying to root for the team, cheer them on, do their part. And I have come to the opinion that one of the big problems that has developed in regard to crowd support is a lot of it's the high ticket prices. It raises the expectation levels extremely high. It means that some of our most staunchest and ardent fans can't afford to go. And when those that can't afford to go, they're like, okay, I paid my £200. I want something better than this. And I can't blame them too much because, if I were there, I might have felt like booing too. I probably wouldn't have because I don't boo the team I support, but it's certainly understandable. And for everyone who's been upset with the outcomes and the quality of play at times, I'm totally sympathetic because I agree with Ange. Those are not acceptable.
Jim, where do you stand on Matisse Tell? Because as I said there, he created 4 chances in that first half. I thought he had an excellent game on Thursday, but then didn't every player have an excellent game on Thursday, to get that job done in Frankfurt? But what have you made of him? Because it's fair to say he's had a lot of game time under Ange Postecoglou during this loan spell so far.
Yeah, I like his talent. I like his speed and quickness. I like his desire. His precision and accuracy, not so much. But he's a young player. I mean, he's 20, something like that.
19.
And so, if I agree that 60 million is probably too much. But if we can get the price down, I wouldn't mind giving him another go next season. Just probably not for 60 million.
Craig, let's come to you. Of course, Ange Postecoglou made a double sub at half-time. Danso and Davis coming on, Romero and Van der Ven coming off. Were you surprised by that? Because, of course, we've spoken already about Ange Postecoglou managing game time ahead of the Europa League semi-finals. Of course, we don't want any of that, or those centre-back pairing to get out injured. And I suppose it's good to give Kevin Danso game time and Ben Davis. Both of them have come back from injury respectively.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I totally agree with all that. I was surprised that, like I say, Van der Ven and Romero started, to be honest. But a sensible move to take both of them off because they are going to be key if we're going to progress in the Europa League, to be honest. I think Ange said, didn't he? It was 10 days would have been between the Europa and the Liverpool game, which would have been too much. So I do get why they played, but every game we play Mickey Van der Ven and Romero and players that are coming back from injury, it's going to be a risk. So, but you've got to give them minutes. So it's a delicate balance. I get that. They've got more minutes in the legs, and they seem to have come through unscathed. So it is what it is.
Craig, what did you make of the booing at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium at half-time? Because this just seems to be like a very regular occurrence, certainly this campaign.
Yeah, it's happened all too many times, hasn't it? And I do get the frustration from the crowd. I've always said, don't like the booing and the disgusting abuse, in my opinion, that Davinson Sanchez got. That's individual players, aimed at individual players. But if you're booing a performance, I think the fan base has just had enough. You only got to look at the size of the crowd tonight. There was seats available in that east stand, south stand, every stand. You know, could have easily got a ticket tonight. People giving them away for free. So again, you know, if we was in pushing where Forest are, pushing for a Champions League spot, that stadium would have been full. I think people have just had enough and just don't want to spend their money going to a game, especially on a bank holiday Monday. A lot of people away, not cancelling plans to go and watch Tottenham, which they may have done in the past. And so people are just kind of voting with their feet, I guess, sort of, and they just can't be bothered to go to the stadium on a bank holiday Monday when the kids are back at school tomorrow, you know, that sort of thing. I think people have just had enough, and that comes back to the booing.
Craig, let's stay with you because let's talk about the second half. On 51 minutes, Kevin Danso, good ball into the box to Pape Matar Sarr. It was a very poor first touch, which got a big, loud groan from the home fans. 3 minutes later, Pedro Porro crossing to Sarr. He flicked it wide. And then a minute later, Nottingham Forest ball through to Gibbs White, who shot wide. Sarr then had another shot from 20 yards, which went wide after 55 minutes. What did you make of Pape Matar Sarr's performance, in particular, in that final third with his opportunities that he had to score?
Yeah, he was almost playing as a false nine in the end because such was dominance of our possession, but just didn't have the breaks. And look, he's not a centre forward. He's not a goal scoring midfielder as such. So should have done better with a couple of them. That one where he miscontrolled, definitely should have done better. But he's all energy, Pape Matar Sarr. You know, at least you're going to get energy in his legs. You know, you're bringing on a player that really puts in the miles, but he's not a natural finisher. So I'm not sure he'll ever be a natural finisher. I think, and I know you'll come on to him, but I think when Lucas Bergvall came on, you can see it at the confidence he's got now, the spraying of the passes around. We look such a better team when Bergvall's in that team. Yeah, which was very interesting for me.
Yeah, I spoke to Mickey Hazard before the game, and he spoke very, very highly of Lucas Bergvall. You know, a great player for the future, a great player now, but for, you know, think about what Lucas Bergvall is going to be like in a couple of years' time. Stu, let's come to you. On 63 minutes, it was clearly Tottenham's best opportunity of the game, and you can see by this graphic here. You know, for those listening on audio, the ball is literally right on the line. Best chance for Spurs in the game fell on 63 minutes, following a corner from Pedro Porro to Kulusevski. And it was cleared off the line. A fantastic opportunity, Stu, and what a clearance from the Forest defence.
Yeah, incredible. And that kind of speaks to what I mentioned earlier in terms of Forest have those defenders. All of them are willing to put their body and everything on the line to prevent a goal going in that net, which I think it's fair to say, you know, we don't have nearly as many of those players. I was celebrating. I was almost waiting for the ref to blow the whistle in the desperate hope that the goal line check would say it was over. But fair play. Like, it was an incredible clearance, and you have to give credit to Toffolo, was it, who did that? But on another day, that inches over the line and it's a goal. So, you know, fine margins are often what dictates a result, and that was one that didn't go for us. But it was an effective example of being a threat and goal. I think it also points to the fact that on his day and on his moment, should I say, Porro obviously has the quality to deliver an exceptional cross. But I'd also think it's fair that he doesn't, for the amount of crosses that he does get in, a lot of them don't even beat the first man. So, you know, you might get, I don't know what the percentage is in actual facts, but in my estimation, 1 out of 4 or 5, if that, is of a quality that might lead to a chance. Would that be fair to say from your point of view?
Yes, Stu, I was going to ask about Dejan Kulusevski, because it's so nice to see him getting a start, because he's been such an important player for us. And of course, a lot of these players have been injured. They've come back. It's very important to get game time in them, as Ange Postecoglou has said so many times. But what did you make of his performance today? I know this was a very, very close chance and effort from him. But what did you make of his overall performance this evening?
Look, unsurprisingly, he looked a little bit off the pace. You're always going to get his full effort, though. And he is one of those, personalities that I believe we need to keep. He has the quality, again, on his day, and when he's, in a good run of form. He's had a difficult second half of the season because he just played so many minutes, from the start of the season all through the injury crisis, pretty much until he got injured. He barely had a minute of rest on the pitch, let's say. So look, I wasn't surprised that he didn't have his best game, but in general, we're a better team with Decky in it. And for sure, his personality is one that we need. And, we'll see better days from him. But yeah, today wasn't his day, even though, he could have easily scored that on a different day.
Jim, let's come to you. I want to talk a little bit about the managing of the game and the players' minutes from Ange Postecoglou's point of view. We mentioned about the injuries a lot of the time, and now, looking forward to the Europa League semi-finals. Ange made a double sub on 67 minutes. Johnson, Solanke coming on, Kulusevski and Odegaard going off. What did you make of this double sub? Were you surprised in any way that Dominic Solanke was called upon, or is it exactly what Spurs needed at that point?
It was a substitution that made perfect sense. There, you need a goal. You want to bring in some guys that can do that for you. You bring in 2 of our best goal scorers, and indeed, they had an effect on the game. We were creating chances left and right from that point on. And so I'd say it's an excellent substitution. It's done for the right reasons, too, because at that point we needed a goal. And those are 2 guys that can get you a goal. So that substitution I liked.
Yep. On 72 minutes, Kevin Danso had a shot on goal. 25 yards, but it went wide. On 80 minutes, Richarlison header at goal, a brilliant save from Sells. Can I ask you, Jim, we'll talk about Richarlison's goal shortly, but what is it you really like about Richarlison? Do you feel like it has actually worked out for him? Because I've said this very often on the podcast that, I was very excited when we signed Richarlison because, I said that he could play on the left, he can play on the right, he can play through the middle, he can play that killer pass, that killer assist and, finish. But we haven't quite seen the Everton version of Richarlison at Spurs. And also Bissouma. I know, of course, he was a sub this evening, but, Bissouma, I feel like we haven't seen the Brighton version of Bissouma. Why do you think that is with Richarlison? Do you think that he could turn his Spurs career around and be a success, or do you see him heading out the door in the summer?
That's an excellent question, because I think if Everton offer enough money, that's the one team where I think a deal could and would be done. I'd be a little bit sad to see him go because there's going to be a season. It's going to come maybe next season, maybe the season after, where he's going to stay healthy a whole season and he's going to score 20 or 30 goals. Now, if he's going to do that, I just assume him do it for Tottenham, but I can understand the club wanting to offload him because you just never know if he's going to remain healthy long enough to really make that kind of difference. And let me mention one other thing. You ever go on YouTube and watch some of these videos like the worst misses of all time, the biggest misses? You know who's on those videos? Mo Salah, Erling Haaland, Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo. They all have had some hilariously bad misses. I've seen Erling Haaland miss one from inside the 6-yard box, put it up over the crossbar.
They get so many chances, though, Jim.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that if you give him enough chances, Well, even Oliver Tyner, he's going to get a lot more goals as well as all the bad misses that we hate. The exact kind that you hate, Chris. And I don't blame you for hating it when that happens because you see one of those. Harry Kane's done it too. Harry Kane has made some ones where I see Harry grab his hair because he knows he should have made that shot. But the best strikers, they're the ones who doesn't let that miss stop them from taking the next shot. That's the difference.
On 81 minutes, Bergvall came on, Saar went off. Spence put a shot wide on 84 minutes. Craig, let's come to you on the Tottenham goal on 87 minutes. Richarlison, Pedro Porro put a cross in, Richarlison header. Is it fair to say that Richarlison actually scored the most difficult of his chances this evening?
Probably, yeah, because he was jumping backwards. That was a good header. It was a good header. Look, the one a few minutes before that, or 5-10 minutes before that, keeper made a brilliant save low to his right.
Yeah.
But that, yeah, it was a difficult header. He's leaning back. He had to generate power. Certain element to guiding that into the net, but he still had to do it, and it was a good header, to be fair to him. But I've got a different opinion to Richarlison than Jim. I just don't think he's good enough, even if he stayed fit for a whole season, sadly. And like I say, I do like him. I love his work rate. I love his passion, but he just doesn't do it enough for me. And I don't think he ever will. I think the most he's ever got in a Premiership season is 13, and that is not what you want from your centre forward, in my opinion.
Can I just go around to each and every one of you and just get your opinions at the moment on how you are feeling overall as a Spurs fan, and especially about Ange Postecoglou? Craig, can we start with you? And then after this, we'll do a very short preview on the Liverpool game.
Weird is the word. I was sitting there today thinking, how do I feel about Tottenham? And it's weird because we're in a major European semi-final. We've got a very good chance to get to a final, and the final one-off game, anything can happen. And I think either team, if we are lucky enough to get to the final, I think we're capable on a day of beating either of them. And we are so close to a final, so close, and yet there's part of me that thinks we're so far away, because you see performances like that in the league and you think, I actually thought we was in a better place than we were going into tonight. And I know people will turn around and say, oh, it's the league. They've checked out the league. You can't check out of the league. You need that momentum. You can't just flick a switch and turn it on. You know, we've got to start fast against Bodo Glimt at home. We've got to get a few goals ahead if we can. And that's the worrying thing for me. So, as I say, while Angie's here, I'll be behind him. I don't think it's going to work for him long term, sadly. But then again, on the flip side, how can you sack a manager if he does win us a Europa League? Will they sack a manager that wins us the first European trophy since 1984? It's a bizarre. I can't even think of the word I'm using I want to portray what I'm feeling, but I'm sure all the viewers and listeners will understand what I'm feeling. It's a very weird place with Tottenham at the moment. The whole thing, the manager, the players and everything is very, very strange.
Yeah. You sound very similar to me, Craig, in so many ways, because, I spoke to so many people earlier at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium about the whole, if Ange wins us a trophy, what happens? And many of them just said, well, he's got to go. He's got to go. And I said, what, after delivering us a European trophy? It seemed absolutely madness. But, of course, when people read out all these stats and say, well, look at all these, unwanted records we keep breaking, we keep losing game after game after game. You said yourself about, I've heard this press conference before. We've said in recent weeks, we've recorded this podcast before. We're just changing a few stats here and there and changing the names. But, the narrative is pretty much the same. It's a difficult one. It's a very, very strange situation. Stu, how are you feeling about it?
It is a strange situation, but then there's also from fans' expectations, there's a lot of hypocrisy. I think we talk about it being a results business, and of course, the modern game is a results business more than it's ever been. But if it's a results business and he wins us the only trophy, the only European trophy we've won in 40 years, the only trophy we've won in 17 years. How can you say that's not getting a result? And if you had offered at the start of the season Europa League at the cost of 17th in the league, how many fans, quite honestly, would not have taken that? Personally, I would have taken that.
Stu,
So-
do you know the amount of times we've recorded this podcast over the last couple of years and the amount of comments from all of the viewers and listeners, and they've all said, "I'd take a mid-table finish. We want a trophy. We want a trophy. I take a mid-table finish, no problem. Don't worry about top four. Don't worry about European football. We want a trophy." And of course, now it's happened, or could happen. I think a lot of people will perhaps change their tune. I'm not. I don't know. It's a really difficult situation.
Do you know what, Chris? Just to jump in there. Sorry, Stu. I agree. I would agree with that. Well, I'd happily finish 17th if we won the Europa League, but finishing 17th and winning a Carabao Cup, I'm not sure that does it for me. And as much as I want a trophy as much as the next man, and the next man's Chris, so I know he's that way. I know he wants a trophy. So I just don't see how that would. You're finishing 17th in the Premier League, only not going down because the 3 teams below you are some of the worst teams in the Premier League history.
Yeah.
But you win a Carabao Cup. It doesn't do it for me. I'm sorry.
Well, regards Daniel Coy's writes, no. And Ryan James says here, never have taken 17th. Jim, how are you feeling about Ange? And how are you feeling generally?
Well, generally, this has been a nightmare of a season. I suffer from depression, and this season has not been good for my depression. On the other hand, it's sort of like we did really well in the League Cup. We've done extremely well in Europa League, and we've just been shit in the league, and that's a problem. I've been Ange in all along, and because of the possible potential. Now, let's say he wins the Europa League, and we're faced with the dilemma. Do we keep him because of that, or do we say that he's like Ten Hag, he can do a cup run, but that's all he can do, and he's not worth much in the league? The only problem is that Manchester United got rid of Ten Hag, and the results haven't gotten any better, and it just keeps that revolving door of managers going over at Man United. And I want to see that revolving door stop if possible. So if Ange wins the Europa League, I say, yeah, he's in. You don't fire him. You give him another chance. You try to fill in the weaknesses on the team, and you try to talk about ways that we can improve in terms of like focus and concentration, especially. And but if he doesn't win the Europa League, I'm not going to be surprised nor even horribly sad if they fire him, because that's the way the Premier League works, and that's the way it is.
Craig, just before we talk about the Liverpool game, I just want to go back to a comment that Jamie Carragher made this evening about Tottenham's performance. Although Anne said it was a good performance this evening, Carragher turned around and said that Spurs look like an academy team. Now, there is a lot of noise around Tottenham at the moment. There are a lot of pundits, ex-footballers, a lot of fans, etc., talking about Ange Postecoglou's style, the way that he does things, the way that he manages games. We've spoken about Spurs being in a semi-final of European competition, only the 4th Spurs manager in Tottenham's history to have done that. Is that a fair comment from Jamie Carragher? And is the noise justified by a lot of the ex-footballers, pundits, etc., players that have been there, done it, got the T-shirt, won trophies?
I don't know about Jamie Carragher. I just think he needs to keep his gob shut sometimes. He seems to really have it in for Tottenham, and, fair play, we are crap, absolutely crap. But, to hear it from him every week, he's just loving it. The fact Liverpool's top of the league, by the way, as well. Even though he was an Everton fan as a kid, I've never understood that either, let me tell you. Because if you're an Arsenal fan, and just weird. I think is a bit harsh saying it's like an academy team. Look, everybody knows where our frailties are. To be fair, some would say our academy team would possibly do better than our first team. So he's made himself look an idiot there, and as David Brent would say. So I don't know. I tend not to listen to a lot of Jamie Carragher's talk, to be honest. I'd rather listen to somebody like Roy Keane. To be honest, I think he a lot more sensible stuff comes out of his mouth than Jamie Carragher.
Right, so lastly, we're going to preview the Liverpool game, which of course takes place on Sunday at Anfield, 4:30 p.m. kickoff. I feel like all of us know our record at Anfield, certainly in Premier League history. It just simply isn't very good at all. Now, the game takes place at Anfield, 4:30 p.m. kickoff, and Liverpool will be confirmed as Premier League champions if Arsenal lose at home to Crystal Palace on Wednesday. Otherwise, a win against Tottenham in front of their own fans at Anfield on Sunday will see them crowned. Now, they are on a high at the moment because two of their key players, Virgil van Dijk and Mo Salah, have just signed brand new contracts. They're out of the Champions League, getting knocked out by PSG. Everyone thought that they would win their first trophy under
Slot,
Craig.
Arnie Slot,
Arnie Slot, of course. Yes. God, it's late. It's nearly 1 in the morning. Arnie Slot.
Keep going, Chris.
But of course, they lost in the final against Newcastle. Craig, what sort of game are you expecting? Because there is a lot of positivity around Anfield at the moment. They're sitting top of the Premier League. It looks like they're going to be champions in the next week or so. You know, a win against Tottenham could see them crowned champions. We know it's a very, very difficult place to go. What are you expecting on Sunday?
I'm really sorry to say I'm kind of expecting a bloodbath, to be honest. I think that Arsenal will win during the week, and I think it's going to be on that game, and they're going to want to win it in front of their own fans. They're going to want to win it in front of the Kop, and I just think they're going to turn us over. I don't see any way we can go to Anfield and get any kind of result. But I'll be brutally honest, I just can't see it. I know football's football, but as King Old will say, I'm braced for it. I'm totally prepared that we're going to walk away from Anfield as usual with nothing. But wouldn't it be lovely, just going back to the previous thing, you were talking about pundits and all that. A lot of the pundits do hate us, without a doubt. Each pundit, like somebody said in the comments that Carragher's got it in for Ange because he called him out. Jamie Redknapp has got the ump with us because we sacked his dad. You know, there's a whole thing going through a lot of the pundits that don't like us. And it's not like, woe is me. I don't think that, because I've stepped out and looked at it, I thought, do Tottenham get what I think unfair criticism from pundits, like just constant banging on, banter, whatever? And I think we do. I think we take our fair share of criticism from people that a lot of the time don't know what they're talking about. I would just love us to win something to shut them all up. And I'd love us to do well in the league to shut them all up and do the talking on the pitch, because it's been horrendous this season. I don't know what Stu and Jim think, but I just think this season it's been unbearable at times with some of the pundits, the way they've gone in on us. Quite rightly, don't get me wrong, but there's just certain things that's been said that really, really piss me off.
Craig, how do you think Ange Postecoglou was set up in this game, and give us your score prediction?
I don't know. I really don't know how he's going to set up. Is he going to play Bissouma? Bissouma seems to be out the door, certainly if Ange does stay. I don't know. I don't expect to see Mickey van der Ven and Christian Romero. I wouldn't surprise me at all if he goes with Danso and Davies or Archie Gray. I think Udogie, I don't actually know what happened to Udogie tonight, whether he's injured or whatever, if anybody knows. But I expect him to come back in if he is fit. Perhaps give Pedro Porro a rest, play Jed Spence on the right. I think he'll probably start Solanke. He'll probably go with Maddison. As for the scoreline, 3-1 Liverpool.
Stu, Sunday.
Well, just very briefly, since it's related to Liverpool, Jamie Carragher is paid to be controversial. I wouldn't trust his opinion on the colour of the sky. And as for Jamie Redknapp, he got rid of Louise Nerding, so who would trust his judgment? So they can both do one. As for the weekend, I want to see a fighting performance. I want to see a performance where we, show some bottle. Look, are we expecting to win it? I think very few people would be expecting us to get that result. But who knows? Stranger things have actually happened. Maybe they'll be so complacent they'll play the team they played against Plymouth and, we'll beat them 1-0. But at this point, I want a performance. And quite frankly, I thought overall our performance was pretty good today. with some exceptions in terms of individual errors for defending. But if I see another performance going forward like today in terms of the intent, I'd be fairly happy. And let's go there, go for it, and I reckon we can get a 2-2 draw. But I'm Paddy positivity after all.
Jim, how are you feeling ahead of this one?
There are two possible scenarios depending on what happens on Wednesday. And I'm sure as hell going to be rooting for Crystal Palace heavily on Wednesday, because if Palace beats Arsenal, then the season's over. Liverpool are not going to really show up to play. They're going to be going through the motions, and we can beat them. If Arsenal wins on Wednesday, start Mikey Moore. Start anybody who hasn't played much. Give playing time to people who need playing time. Don't expect to win the game. It's not going to happen. It's like standing in front of an out of control freight train and pretending that you're Superman and you can hold it back. No, that's unreasonable expectations. I want to win the games after Liverpool. If we don't win this weekend, I'm not going to be devastated. I'll be sad. It will be still an unacceptable additional loss in the league, but I won't be devastated.
Yeah. Well, all eyes on the Europa League, as I said at the start. That's what it's all about. I know we've got these league games still to go, but I feel like a lot of us are in the same camp of, just get this league season over and done with, and let's not break any more unwanted records. I'm going to probably, want to forget the Liverpool manager's name again on Sunday, and indeed the place and the trip on Sunday. But as you've all said, let's put in a performance and keep giving the game time to players that it's going to be very important for in the semi-finals. Craig, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Where can people find you? What you're up to at the moment?
No worries, Chris. At Dearman 9 on X. If you want to follow me, that would be great. Not up to much really. Just want the season to be done now. But I am looking forward to the Europa because we hold on to that one bit of hope, don't we, as Tottenham fans? So I am looking forward to Thursday week and hope we can get across the line, and then all eyes on 21st of May.
How many Easter eggs did you eat over the last couple of days, Craig?
I didn't eat any. I'm not a chocolate person, really. I have to be in the mood to... I do like a Kit Kat chunky, though, I have to say. Stu's had my share.
Craig, thank you so much. And Stu,
No
thank you so much for your input this evening. Where can people find you?
On the couch. Other than that, no, I don't really do social media. I haven't done for quite a while, just to try and preserve my sanity. I do a monthly DJ show playing soulful music on vocalboothradio.com. If you want to catch me there, you can check out the schedule there. Other than that, you'll find me being superbly optimistic, positive, deluded, happy clapping all the way to a Europa League victory.
Well, that'd be fantastic. Thank you, Stu. Thank you so much. And Jim, it's been a pleasure talking to you on the Spurs Chat podcast this evening. And thank you so much for all of your input over the last, throughout the whole of the season. Actually, you've been a regular on our Spurs Around the World videos, providing those, which we've all really enjoyed. So thank you so much for your input. And I take it you don't do social media either?
I do social media, but my YouTube channel is mostly art and music. If you want to look at me as a songwriter and musician, you can find that. If you want to look at me as an artist, you can find that. I don't generally put soccer commentaries up on my YouTube channel, although I probably could, but I'm not good at socializing, so I don't have as wide a network as friends as some people, but I'm also an author. If you want to look me up for that, fine. But I'm not a big social media presence.
Jim, tell us about the book you've written then.
I'm sorry?
Tell us about the book that you've written.
Oh, I've written 5 novels and a novella, actually 5 novels and 2 novellas, and I only published one of them, and it didn't do very well. I don't expect anyone should want to buy it, but if you want to look it up, it's called The Researcher by James Brentar. Should be available wherever you can buy books online, but I'm not here to promote me as an author. I'm here to root on the Spurs and say, come on, you Spurs, let's do our best on Sunday against Liverpool, and let's beat Bodo Glimt.
Absolutely. What Jim said. Indeed. Well, Craig, Stu, Jim, thank you so much for your input, and thank you so much to everybody who has watched and listened to this podcast this evening. I know it's never, ever easy, us recording after a defeat, particularly after 18 league defeats. It's been hard, but we're pinning all of our hopes and dreams on lifting that Europa League trophy this season in Bilbao. Thank you so much for all of your incredible support. We were the #1 football podcast in Colombia, of all places, this week. So thank you so much for all of your incredible support there. We will see you after the Liverpool game, where hopefully Spurs have put in a shift, got a performance, and got the 3 points at Anfield, a rare 3 points at Anfield. Wouldn't that be nice? But we will see you Sunday, and enjoy the rest of your week. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.